couldn't. I love the night. That's the only time I feel really alive.
That's what David wanted.
Blood, I was to find, was a necessity as well.
A vampire in love with a slayer. It's rather poetic. I am the monster the breathing men would kill. I am Dracula.
Good evening, my fellow vampire lovers. The sun is going down, and you know what that means. It's time for me to record another episode of my podcast, The Beautiful Dead. As always, I'm your host, Alina Nazari, and I know that I said last week that we were going to do Vamp U today, but I went and saw Sinners because you guys have been blowing up my social media asking me when I was going to go see it, and the plan was to do this as kind of a bonus episode. Well, I came back from vacation with a little bit of a respiratory virus, had to fight that, and then Pittsburgh got slammed with storms and we did not have power. So it's been 4 days and there's part of the city that still does not have power, but I'm one of the lucky ones. So we're going to do Sinners this weekend because so many people have been asking. And then I promise I will bring Vamp U next weekend. As you can hear, the door is open and Juliet is clickety-clacketing back and forth. Because we're getting slammed with another round of storms. So she is staring out the window while also checking on me to make sure that I am okay. So I'm still fighting this respiratory thing, but I was like, I gotta get this thing out. So many people had asking. I'm already behind. So many podcasts have already covered this movie. But to anybody who's been asking, thank you so much for being patient. I promised I would bring it to you, and I did. But I have some coffee here, which will hopefully keep my throat calm so I won't cough, fingers crossed, and I can get through this review. Yay. Okay, if you are not familiar with this podcast, welcome first off, and if you guys could find it in your heart, I see that so many people who watch are not subscribed. It doesn't cost you anything. Guys, I will have 2 children in college this fall. Please help me subscribe, save, share, get the word out so more people can find out about the podcast. I'm asking you, please, sincerely. But if you're new to the podcast, I do ruin everything. So massive spoiler alert. The point of this podcast is to really break down the vampire universe, and we have to talk about everything to do that. Listen to her back and forth, back and forth. I'm so sorry if you can hear it. If you can't, ignore me. So normally I will kind of try and write my own summary, but because I was in a movie theater, there was no way to pause and write. So we're going to go back to the old format, which is I found the summary written on Wikipedia. So thank you to the person who wrote this summary out for me. Thank you. So we're going to quickly summarize the movie, and then we are going to talk about the vampire universe, the rules, are they allowed in the sunlight, garlic, all that good stuff. If you have not seen Sinners yet and you plan on seeing it and don't want it ruined, please click off of this video and then come back after you've seen it. Or if you don't plan on seeing it and you just want to hear me talk about the vampires, come on and stay, because I'm going to tell you all about the movie so that when we talk about it, it makes a little bit of sense to you. Because this movie is new, I don't know how much I'm going to be able to share with you. I'm going to try, but YouTube's kind of been a little bitch lately, and there's so much I haven't been able to share. Anybody who watched Dracula Has Risen from the Grave sees that there was absolutely nothing in that video. I tried. I kept whittling it down. And after the 4th round, I was like, whatever, you win, Warner Brothers, and I just took everything out. So I apologize, but I'm going to try. All right, let's talk about Sinners. All right. It is 1932, and identical twins Smoke and Stack return to Clarksdale, Mississippi after years spent working for the Chicago outfit, which they do mention that they work for Capone. Using money stolen from gangsters, what they don't say is they stole from the Italian gangsters and the Irish gangsters and then just left them to fight each other. They purchased a sawmill from a racist landowner named Hogwood to start a juke joint for the local black community. Their cousin Sammy, an aspiring guitarist, joins them despite opposition from his pastor father, Jedediah, who warns that blues music is supernatural. The twins recruit other staff. There's pianist Delta Slim, singer Pearline, with whom Sammy becomes enamored. As performers, there's Smoke's estranged wife Annie as the cook. Local Chinese shopkeepers Grace and Bo are the suppliers. The field worker Cornbread is their bouncer. Meanwhile, Stack reconnects with his ex-girlfriend Mary, who passes for white. She is mixed. Mary resents Stack for abandoning her when he went to Chicago. Smoke and Annie argue over their belief in the occult as Annie insists her practice, which I believe is hoodoo, keeps the twins safe, but Smoke bitterly reminds her that how come our infant daughter is still dead. Elsewhere, Irish immigrant vampire Remick flees from Choctaw vampire hunters and violently turns a married Klansman couple into vampires. I actually didn't know the couple were Klansmen. I don't know if I missed out on something, but that was something that shows up in the summary, so good for that person. At the Juke Joint's opening night, Sammy's music is transcendent, unknowingly summoning spirits of both past and future to join the entranced crowd. The performance draws Remick's attention and he arrives with his minions, offering music and money for entry. Suspicious, the twins hesitate and the vampires retreat. Reminding the twins that their bar needs income, Mary meets Remick outside but is turned. She returns inside where she seduces Stack and bites him. Smoke shoots her, but she is unharmed by regular bullets and escapes. Cornbread is attacked by Remick and also turned. As the joint empties, the vampires attack and turn the departing patrons, including Bo. Stack revives as a vampire, but Annie repels him with pickled garlic juice, which I think would repel anybody. She educates the survivors. Only sunlight, silver, or wooden stakes can kill the vampires, and they cannot enter a building unless invited. Remick, now leading a horde of vampires, but still unable to enter the bar, negotiates. He praises Sammy's supernatural talent and claims that vampirism will offer him immortality, freedom, and escape from racism. He wants to use Sammy's skills to summon the spirits of his lost community. Remick also warns that Hogwood, who secretly heads the local KKK, plans to attack the bar at dawn. When survivors refuse this offer, Remick and Bo confront Grace, threatening to attack her daughter. A desperate Grace dares the vampires to attack the joint, inviting them in a scene that gave me goosebumps. Grace, Delta Slim, and Annie are killed in the ensuing battle. Mary is devastated by Annie's death and flees the bar. Smoke, Sammy, and Pearline attempt to escape, but Remick and Stack ambush them. Smoke and Stack clash in a brutal fight while Sammy and Pearline face off with Remick. Pearline is bitten and begs Sammy to flee. In a final confrontation, Sammy smashes his guitar over Remick's head before Smoke arrives just in time to kill him with a stake. As the sun rises, the vampire horde is incinerated. Urging Sammy to flee, Smoke ambushes and kills Hogwood and the clan, but is himself mortally wounded. Before dying, he witnesses a vision of Annie and their daughter. Sammy, battered and grief-stricken, returns to his father's church. Jedediah pleads with him to renounce his music and seek salvation, but Sammy is seen leaving with his guitar in his hand. 60 years later, an ageless Stack and Mary visit the elderly Sammy, now a celebrated blues musician in Chicago. Stack reveals that Smoke spared him that night at the joint, allowing him to go free under the condition that Sammy would live in peace. The couple offers Sammy the chance for immortality, but he declines. After performing for the couple, Sammy tells them that though the fateful night still haunts him until the sun went down, it was the greatest day of his life. Stack agrees, noting it was the last time he saw Smoke, the last time he saw the sun, and the only time he ever felt truly free. And that is Sinners. Bravo, the person who wrote this. Very well written and quite the vocabulary. So, sorry guys, I'm trying to make it through. Let's talk about some vampire crossovers. So I was going through the whole list, and I was getting lower and lower and lower, and I was losing hope. But I found one. Andreen Ward Hammond, who plays Ruthie in this movie, was in one episode of Vampire Diaries as a Coven member, so we're going to give it to her. We'll give it to Sam Malone and Tanaj Jackson, who were in this and were also each in one episode of American Horror Story. Now, it was season 3. It was not the vampire season, but we're going to give it to them because it is a vampire universe. Speaking of universes, you guys know I can find supernatural references in anything, but I don't know if this was intentional, but twice Remick, when he's talking to Sam, goes, Sammy. And every time I heard it, I was like, tell me that is supernatural reference, because it was so dead on.
Sam! Sammy!
Oh, if I'm wrong, I don't care. Don't take it away from me, okay? So a little bit of trivia. As I was searching through IMDb, I found out that Coogler, the guy who's behind the movie, said that Salem's Lot and From Dusk Till Dawn were big inspirations for him. And now that I read that, I can totally see it. It makes so much sense. It is very From Dusk Till Dawn-like in the fact that they're trapped and trying to fight off these vampires and make it to the sunlight. In Salem's Lot, the same way that, like, very quickly a bunch of people are turned in the community. I can totally see that. Okay. Whew, we're going to make it through. I'm so sorry about this cold. Let's break down the vampire universe of Sinners. All right. And if I miss anything, please don't hesitate to tell me. I tried to catch as much as possible. It's 2 hours and 17 minutes. I had my notes app on my phone and I had the dimness turned down, so I tried to type as much as I could catch, but I'm sure I missed something. So by all means, let me know. Let's talk about relationship to humans. Annie knows about vampires, and that's because she practices in the occult, and I believe it is hoodoo, since she has mojo bags. She runs sort of an occult shop, and it is down south towards Louisiana territory, which makes me think it's probably hoodoo. It's implied that the local Choctaw tribe are vampire hunters, and they know about vampires because they chase Remnick to this house. And once they realize the vampire is already inside, they're like, God be with you, and they walk away. So these are two groups that know about vampires in this world, but the rest of the humans don't think vampires are real until it's in their face and it's too late. The vampires in this world, they are out to eat humans, turn humans, that's it. So I don't think we're going to find with these vampires like a vampire-human romance or anything like that. So they're kind of walking amongst humans, and for the most part, they're just looking to eat. Relationship to animals, this is never addressed. We never see a bat or a wolf, and it's never even, we don't even get hints to the fact that they may in some way either repel animals or commune with animals. We never see any of that. Appearance. On first sight, they appear human, but once they vamp out, their eyes shine. Sometimes it's just the pupil, sort of the back of the pupil. Sometimes it is the pupil and the iris, but there is a shine to it. So imagine almost like an animal caught in a flashlight. That is what the pupils look like. And sometimes the pupils turn red as well. They drool, which is an old legend. We saw that in the Vortilac, but that's an old one, that vampires will start to drool. And that's how Stack knows something is up with Mary. And at the end, Remick, as he's having the sort of the final showdown, he has very long nails. So he's sort of like extra vamped out, and all of the vampires have fangs. The implication is sort of that Remick is the master vampire. So we'll just think of him as sort of a special vampire, but I try and talk about them all generally. Fangs. So the master vampire Remick has all sharp teeth, and then his two canines on each side are a little bit more elongated, but all of them are sharp when he vamps out. The rest of the ones that get turned throughout, it appears when they vamp out, they only have the two elongated canines. It looks almost like they can retract and extend their fangs, but when we see Mary and Stack in the future, they kind of have their fangs out at all times. I don't know if that's just for Sammy because he knows they're vampires, or I don't know. It was the 90s. Maybe they just figured nobody cares. Blood. Yes, they drink blood. We don't know how much they need. We don't know if they can drink from animals. All we know is that they do drink blood. We know that. We never see them eat or drink once they are turned. They are burned by garlic, just like acid. And at one point, there's a great scene where the survivors are in the club and they each have to eat garlic to prove to the rest that they are not vampires. Sunlight. When we first see Remick, he is in the sun. However, he is sort of like starting to burn and sizzle and sear a little bit. He makes it to the porch, which is covered, and he's still kind of like cooking a little bit, but he makes it into the house, and by the time he attacks the couple, he is healed. So it looks to me like you need a long time to burn. In the end, however, they all burn pretty quick. So I'm thinking, again, because Remick is old or because he's the master vamp, it takes longer for him to burn up, but the young ones, they burn up pretty fast at the end. Sleep. This whole movie happens in one night. So if they have to crawl into the dirt or they have to get into coffins or they have to whatever, I don't know because we never see that. Holy items. So when Annie's kind of going down the rundown and she's like, these are not haints, these are vampires, she starts going through the rules or what she knows to be the rules. She mentions holy water. However, we never see holy water. They don't have it in the juke joint, so we don't know if that's true. And Lisa is wearing a cross the whole time, and it does not stop the vampires. So that makes me think the holy items thing, not an issue. And Remick is actually able to say the Lord's Prayer. So I don't think they're repelled by holy items, and they can certainly pray. So I don't know about the whole holy thing, but it's looking like a no to me. Powers. Remick is sort of able to throw his voice around. This is kind of how he distracts Cornbread when he's outside. So either he's throwing his voice or he is able to move very quickly and speak. Either way, pretty cool. Remick can fly. We see this at the end. As for the other vampires, they appear to be very strong, but we don't know if they have any other kind of powers. So I don't know if it's something that you get developed over time, over the years, or just because Remick happens to be a master vampire. Rules. So this is huge. They have to be invited in. And even though the juke joint is a public place, they still have to be invited in to get in. And that is a very, very big part of the movie. At the end, when the survivors have sort of like hit their breaking point and this poor woman has had her daughter threatened, she says, "Come on in." And that's where like it all happens. So it kind of reminded me of the Dusk Till Dawn scene where he throws him through the window breaks, and George Clooney's like, "Oh shit," and all the vampire bats come in. It was very much like that. So now they know, like, we also learned that if you reach through the entryway, the vampires can pull you out. So, good to know. We don't know about reflections. This is never addressed. One thing we know about the vampires is once you're turned, you share a consciousness. He turns the couple in the beginning. They show up at the door and they're like, "We can sing for you." And all of a sudden, all three of them start playing and they're like doing this choreograph dance together and singing in harmony. And that was my first hint of like, oh, they can share consciousness. The other thing that happens is Remick turns bow, and once Remick turns bow, Remick can now speak Chinese. So it's very cool the way they do it. So now all of a sudden everybody can play instruments, everybody can speak languages because they're all sharing consciousness. I thought that was very cool. It has kind of like a nest feel to it. And this is a big one. Annie explains that as far as she knows, that when vampires are turned, the soul is trapped in the body and they're stuck on Earth away from their ancestors. So this gives them sort of a rage the longer they stay on Earth because they are never going to be reunited with the people they love. And that is why Remick wants Sammy, because Sammy's music conjures ancestors. So with Sammy's music, Remick will get to see his people again. So that is the whole point of this whole thing. There are some people who have this ability, like Sammy, that their music pierces the veil between the living and the dead. So that's what happens. So we get to see this beautiful scene where he's first singing, and like all these ancestors suddenly are showing up, and like time and culture are all sort of mingling together. And it was so freaking well done and so beautiful and haunting. And then Remick has this monologue at the end where he talks about how religious men took their land and preached about heaven and hell, but it was all a lie and they were bad men. So the implication is that Remick is an Irish immigrant who's been on this earth for a very long time. So I did a little digging. The first Irish settlers came to Florida in 1560, with the biggest immigration being between 1717 and 1776. So we assume he was in some of that immigration of the Irish people fleeing what was happening in Ireland. So the implication is he's very old and that he has been without his family for a very long time. I thought that was very powerful. So how are they made? Okay, so it's one bite is all it takes. The turn is pretty quick. Some of them are a matter of seconds, some of them are a matter of minutes, but the turn is pretty quick. And there's a great scene where they find somebody dead in the kitchen with blood all around him. So they drag the body out before he can turn. And then they do the garlic around the circle and realize nobody is a vampire. So like, well, how did that guy get killed? And then we see the guy come to outside, and it wasn't blood, it was red wine. And the guy was just passed out drunk, and they drug him out to the vampires. It was such a good scene. So the turn is fast. How do they die? Bullets do not work. We get to see that. They get shot, like some of the vampires get shot a lot and nothing happens. When staked in the heart with a wooden stake, they gush like a whole bunch of blood like a fountain, but that's it. They don't burst into dust or disintegrate or anything like that. In the sunlight, they burst into flames and turn to ash. Remick at the end, he gets hit in the head with a guitar, and the center of the guitar almost looks like it might be silver. It's in his head, and you see his head kind of start to disintegrate. So I'm like, oh, that must be silver. Then he gets staked in the heart. The dude is still fighting. Then the sun comes out, and then he starts to kind of like melt. And so it took like 3 things to kill Remick. Annie is nice enough to explain at one point that killing the master does not kill the horde. So that's always something we watch out for, is killing the master going to turn all the other ones back to human. Not in this world. In this world, you have to kill them off one by one. Heartbeat or breathing is never discussed. We have no idea. Okay, this is a tough one. Are they good or are they bad? So throughout the movie, you're watching this and you're like, the vampires immediately turn bad, right? Because like Beau is ready to go kill his daughter. He's trying to lure Lisa out. They were trying everything to get these people out for the purpose of turning them into vampires. That being said, Remick makes it extremely clear he is not racist, and he's actually trying to help people be free in his own twisted way. And then at the end, when we have our after credit scene where it's the 90s, Mary and Stack made it out alive, and they let Sammy live for 60 years. And now they're just coming back to say, hey, now that you're like gonna die, do you want to be turned into a vampire? And he's like, thanks, but no thanks. So they're just 2 vampires in love who just went off and did their thing, lived their life, you know. So I guess it's like a lot of things that we talk about, which is you can choose with vampirism if you're going to be good or if you're going to be bad. That is entirely up to you. So I'm so sorry I keep coughing. Tropes I love and tropes I hate. Okay. I love, and I have talked about this before, I love when a movie brings together like a ragtag bunch of people who now have to come together to fight the big bad. I especially love it when some of them have some beef between them or are strangers. I love when there's a diverse group from different backgrounds. And this movie, people complained it was too long. I honestly could have watched another hour of it. But the first act of this movie does such a good job of bringing these people together and letting us know who they are very quickly so that by the time the fight happens, we actually care about them. I love when there's a group of hunters that have had this tradition of hunting passed down through them. We see that in the Vampire Diaries. And in this world, it's the Choctaw people, which I thought was so cool. I love when there's ancient local lore or legend around the vampires, and that there's this whole like special group of people who can use music to pierce the veil and bring your ancestors back. So freaking cool. I love when a character says, if I get bitten, swear that you'll stake me, and then, you know, they make good on that. So we do see that with Pearline and Sammy. They say, you know, if I don't make it out, please don't let me turn. I love that trope. This is more of a horror trope than vampires specifically, but I love the trope of the group of survivors going around and having to each do this thing to prove that they're not the monster. We see it in The Thing, probably the most famous thing. Most famous scene would be from The Thing. We see it in Supernatural, and we saw it in this one, and I love that trope. And I always love when there's that one person who right away knows what's going on, has all the information, especially when at first they look at them and they're like, you're crazy, but it turns out they're right. And all I got to say is, I know how people look at me when they find out how much I love vampires and how I've made it my whole life. But guess who's going to come looking for me when the apocalypse happens or we're in a vampire experience? Everyone's going to be turning to me and being like, what do we do? That's all I got to say. Tropes I hate. We talk about this. I don't like one bite is all it takes. Mostly because it's messy. You know, so every time you feed, you're going to have to decapitate that person to make sure they don't come back, or you're going to end up with like a horde of vampires. So I just don't like it logistically. However, in this world, it works because you did need to have a big group very quickly for the tension to keep climbing and for them to be sharing consciousness. In this world, too, you didn't have to bite the neck because Mary's bite is actually down on her trap. But I don't like the one bite is all it takes. It just feels too much zombie-like for me. But yeah, I know why they used it in this world. All right, ratings. How sexy or alluring are the vampires of Sinners? We see Mary have sex with Stack. However, yes, she's been turned, and yes, she's having sex, but they don't finish, and I think the point of it was to get him distracted and under her so that she could turn him. I don't think it was about the sex itself. The vampires don't suddenly have a lure once they're turned, because we see Cornbread trying to get in, and Annie's like immediately suspicious. They've been like, you've been in and out all night. Why do you suddenly now need invited in? We will give them their vampire point, and I will give them a point because they do have sex. And I will give them a point because they can be in monogamous couples. We see that with Stack and Mary at the end. And I'm going to throw them a point too because sharing knowledge means that you're going to know a lot of fun stuff in the bedroom. So you're going to be a lot of fun if I get you in the bedroom. That being said, they're likely going to tear your throat out before you climax. So 4 out of 10 onks for sexiness and allure. How scary or evil are the vampires of Sinners? They are bound by the sun. Stakes will take them down. Garlic water can stop them, so that's not a great start. But they turn quickly and easily. They share knowledge, which makes them very, very good hunters. But they do need invited in, and there is a whole group of hunters out there tracking them down. So you have to ask yourself, okay, are they more scary than sexy? If you find yourself in a small building with a mob of these vampires, you should probably be very concerned. But Stack and Mary do choose to leave Sammy to grow old. So yes, they're more scary than they are sexy, but they're not the scariest thing out there. They can choose to not hurt people. So we're going to give them a 7 out of 10 stakes to the heart for scariness and evil. I need a cough break. Oh, gang, I'm so sorry. All right. I'm going to make it through. All right. My thoughts. This is what everybody's been DMing me. What are your thoughts about Sinners? When are you going to cover Sinners? I want to hear what you think about Sinners. Here's what I think. I'm going to be honest with you guys. When I saw the first preview months ago, I thought it was going to be an Evil Dead situation where the music was like the Necronomicon and the approaching figures were demons. I thought it was a demon thing. So when my DM started lighting up about when am I going to cover Sinners, I was like, I didn't know. So I went and saw it as soon as possible, and you were right. People complaining about the length, I don't understand. I could have kept watching it. I think, like I said, I feel like it was Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and I thought it was beautifully done. The writer takes the time to build the world, to create these characters that leads up to the big opening night in this juke joint. He knows, and now we know, who loves who. How much do these people mean to the brothers? How much do they mean to each other? We know all of this before the attack, and that is so important because that's how you build tension. That's how you have something to lose, right? I was worried that this movie was just going to be a bunch of music with like story in between, almost like a concert. But I was wrong. I was wrong because the music is done in this way that entwines with the action and the story building in this very intoxicating way that wants you to keep watching and just, it tricks you. You don't even realize stuff is happening. It's just sort of coming at you and you're just sort of lost in the music and the dance and the action and the camera movements. The initial song that calls Remick is this beautiful scene in which you see, like I said, generations and cultures and ancestral spirits who are all merging in the reality of this crowd. And you actually see people that I think are from the future because they're all these ancestors brought together. It is so perfect. I cannot wait to buy this movie and watch that scene again. That scene and the scene of the vampires outside singing, those two scenes, that Irish song with the vampires singing, with the fire all around them and the choreography and the movement and the shining of the eyes, I'm telling you, this is what I love about the vampire genre. Vampires are so universally recognized that you can walk into a vampire movie and already halfway be there because you are familiar with the concept, right? So then this is where you get to be so creative and you get to put your own spin on it, your own take on it, your own lore on it. And this is my idea of vampires done right. They had an idea, they had a setting, they had a feel in mind, which they brought to us in this very rich way. However, this movie would have fallen apart if the vampires themselves had not been fleshed out and really thought about and had solid rules. And that's where the world building and the rules are so important. And this writer did such a good job of knowing his vampires inside and out, sticking to his rules, making sure we understood them too so that we could go along with it. This movie had so many layers to it. And I would be thrilled if they bring us back into this vampire universe again. Maybe we'll get to follow Stack and Mary and see what happened with them. Maybe we'll get a whole new story in the same universe with a different singer. I don't care. I would absolutely love to go back into this universe again. I loved this movie. And I really want to know your thoughts about it. I want to know if you agree with me, disagree with me, why. It's totally fine either way. But I will be recommending this movie to everyone. It's probably going to end up on my list of top vampire movies. I know that I will absolutely be watching it again. I've already been listening to the soundtrack. Please let me know if you think I'm totally wrong. Okay. I've had enough. So, I was already planning on doing Vamp U. So Vamp U will come next weekend for Mother's Day, and in Vamp U we have another set. So in this one we have twins. In Vamp U we have identical relatives. So I kind of started to create a theme without even realizing it. So the whole month of May, our vampire movies are going to have identical relatives, whether it be twins or ancestors that are identical. All 4 movies this month are going to have that. So it's going to be this one, Done. Next weekend, we're going to do Vamp You. Then we are going to do The Vampire Happening from 1971. And then we're going to do Twins of Evil. So we are going to keep an identical relative theme for our vampires in May. You can find all of these online. Please stick it out with me as I try and fight off this cold. Bear with me in the month of May. I have a kid graduating high school. I'm going to Fan Expo Philly the 16th, 17th, and 18th. Tony from Hack the Movies will be at my table with me on the 18th if you want to come see us together or just meet Tony. If you made it to the end, please put in the comments, what is your go-to way of treating a cough? What do you do when you have a cough? I know one of my patients told me that they have, it's either whiskey or bourbon at night, then they put Vicks VapoRub on the bottom of their feet, and then they put socks on, and apparently that's gonna pull my cough out. So I'll try it. I'll try anything right now. So let me know down below what you think I should use to try and cure this cough. I love you guys. Thank you so much for being patient with me as we got through respiratory viruses and then Pittsburgh blackout and thunderstorms. I wish you wicked hugs and bloody kisses. Good evening.